My Own Garms.
Yes, my mates, what is happening with you lot? I'm Thomas Griffin, this is My Own Garms, and this week we've got the absolute pleasure of the amazing actress Amber Anderson. She's also a super successful model, which we're going to get into a bit today, an incredible musician, and just a bit of a gem of a person, really. I first saw her in the final series of Peaky Blinders last year and got to know a load more about her when she guested on my Two Shot podcast. I told her about My Own Garms when it was just a germ of an idea, and when I got round to recording the first episodes, I thought it should be good crack to chat to. Anyway, if you like it, make sure that you subscribe. We've got loads of other ace guests coming up, and if you've got a pal that likes clothes and that, send them a little message with a link to this episode in it. Tell them, get on this podcast, it is class. Right, let's crack on. This is Amber Anderson on My Own Garms. Amber, thank you very, very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Is a happy birthday in order?
Yes.
Many happy returns.
Thank you.
Pisces season.
31.
Lovely.
Everyone says the 30s are better than the 20s, so I'm actually kind of quite surrendered to it and quite happy about it. Yeah, it was a good weekend. It was very, very relaxed. I did a pub lunch, had some people back to our flat, and then yesterday I went to some Roman baths.
Oh, and bathed?
And bathed.
Class.
And steamed and floated in a...
I thought you were glowing.
Thanks. Thank you. It's this place, and they have a bath which is basically like the Dead Sea where you float.
Super salinated, like.
Oh my God, it's amazing. So yeah, I'm very like floaty today.
Many happy returns.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the outfit that you've done. You're off to the theatre later tonight, so.
I'm wearing a dress from a brand called American Vintage, which I love, and I'm wearing boots which are from the Kooples, and I wanted something that was, I guess, nice enough to like go to the theatre and feel like I'd left the house and like put something else on other than a tracksuit, but also not too over the top. And this is really comfortable.
So what would you call that fabric?
I think it's silk.
When it's like textured like that, it's kind of got those little...
I know, it's almost like a waffle thing.
Yeah, waffle
going
weave.
On. Waffle weave.
Super nice anyway.
Thank you.
Like the salsa emoji. That's the archetypal red dress I think we come across on a daily basis. You know the one I mean?
Yeah.
Very
I got confused for a minute. I thought you meant the chili, but I know what you mean now. It's like, oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, perfect theatre outfit.
Thanks.
Boots look like good for the... Can you flash them to the camera for us? I don't know if we'll pick them up.
I don't know.
There. Yeah, they look like the perfect mid-season boot.
These are mid-season boots. They are good for Scotland. They're good for London. They're good for like anything, really. They're like very comfortable, very worn in the way that boots should be.
What was the break-in session like for them? Was it years?
Horrendous.
Months? Yeah.
I'd say about a year and a half. Like not comfortable.
I think.
I was wearing blister plasters and stuff. Like yeah.
Like the boots you really earn your keep with, I think, don't you? And then you reap the rewards for the 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Perfect for.
Yeah, I love your outfit. I've heard that there's sort of like a combat trouser, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
People are saying combat trousers are back in.
Have you dabbled?
I have recently dabbled.
Have you?
I actually almost wore them today.
G.I. Jane
G.I. Jane vibes, yeah, completely. But mine are like a 70s flare, high-waisted.
Oh, man.
They're less cool and more dressy than yours are. I love the print of yours.
Thank you. This guy called Ben Miller, who does paintings. The brand is a fly fishing brand, South 2 West 8. And this guy does... paintings with a fly fish whip, and this print off here apparently is a collaboration between Ben Miller and South 2 West 8, so it's all like paint splats and stuff, but yeah, it's definitely got that military fatigue.
No, thing. They're really cool.
Do you know Nepenthes in Soho? They've got like South 2 West 8 and Needles and Engineered Garments and another the Japanese. I pretty much buy all my stuff from there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, appreciate the compliment.
Your ends.
You were born in the southwest of England, but moved up the road to Scotland. I believe that's a turn of phrase people use when they've gone to Scotland. Up the road.
Yeah.
Describe to me what you think defines Scotland sartorially and how much of that has rubbed off on you over the years.
Oh, I mean, it's all about comfort and warmth and basically practicality, to be honest. Like, And people always get very surprised when I say this, but I grew up 5 hours north of Glasgow. So like, if you imagine how far away Glasgow is from London, it's like another 5 hours. I grew up in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, maybe a 20-minute walk to school across the fields. It was a very difficult house to live in. There was no central heating. We had like a wood burner in the kitchen. When it snowed, you couldn't get the car up the drive. It was like you had to walk up to the house. It was like the most remote rural setting you could imagine. I also went to a Steiner school, which meant that, you know, it was like a fairly alternative community of kids whose parents wanted to kind of, I guess, prioritize that they were like creatively developed rather than like necessarily going to
emotionally
developed, or like going to a more regular school where it was like maybe all about the trends and like who had the cool clothes.
Okay.
And so like cool clothes were very much discouraged. A lot of my clothes were from charity shops. And yeah, again, I would sleep fully dressed sometimes because it was that cold in my house.
Wow.
So my version of Scotland is like big woolly jumpers, jeans, big woolly socks, you know, 2 coats, thermal layers. And I think that there is an element of that has still stuck with me even through being a model and acting and living in London, which is like, I'm definitely happiest when I feel comfortable, and I don't function very well just day to day if I feel restricted or like too exposed or too like hemmed in by something. I really believe that you should wear clothes and that they shouldn't wear you. And I think that there's an amazing dress up element and an amazing, like, you know, there's a sort of freedom and a play with clothes that's really fun. But day to day, I'm like very low maintenance. And I think that is Scotland.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I think of Scotland, I'm thinking natural fabrics, I'm thinking tweeds, and I'm thinking wools. And
Yeah.
when you talk about comfort, some of those, I've been always terrible with itchy jumpers, like wool jumpers.
No,
I know you got to wear them in a little bit.
Yeah.
It can get nice and soft.
I have my aunt's Aran sweater that she got in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And I wear it still.
Beautiful.
But it's the kind of thing that you can't wear without like something else underneath because
Okay.
it's painful to wear. But it's beautiful.
Like sackcloth, like a punishment garment.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I can certainly see it in the things that I've seen you wear. It certainly looks like there's elements of Scottishness in it.
I think so. And I think it also just depends on the person, but I generally tend to like, it's not even baggy clothes, but I've never been one of those women that's all been about like having everything out on show. And I quite like wearing, I don't even know if this is the right word these days, but like tomboyish clothes. And I think that is definitely from growing up in a place where it was just too cold. And I tried, believe me, like I would go to school in Scotland in the winter wearing like skinny jeans and ballet pumps and things. And it would last a day before you'd be like, this is ridiculous. This doesn't work. But then I went to another school in my teens. When I went to music school, it was much more about the cool clothes and who had turn-up jeans and Adidas shell-toe trainers and like...
Yeah, I remember that era.
There was a uniform that was like not a uniform.
Yeah. So your school didn't have a uniform at all, which is quite different to everyone else's. And that's, you know, from someone who went to a school with a uniform, non-uniform day was the best day of the year.
Yeah.
It did come with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
You had to do what you had to do on a daily basis. But the reality of it is, it sounds, I don't know, like exhausting, to be quite honest.
I think when you're in a school, which is like in my Steiner school, where it was, again, a fairly kind of unself-conscious, like slightly hippie kind of culture, it was kind of great not having a uniform because everyone was sort of in the same boat. We all just wore quite scruffy clothes that a lot of them were secondhand. And it was a very similar vibe, but I had the shock of my life when I then went to like my high school, which didn't have a uniform, but it was on the outskirts of a city. and there were Neds and emos and, you know, there were all the subcultures that you get in a school. And I came from this like farmhouse in the middle of nowhere.
Did you not find the farmer core, cottagecore community?
No, I didn't. I wish I had. But I was literally wearing welly boots.
Right.
Like, that was how uncool I was.
And how did that go down?
I mean, I was bullied. I was so badly bullied, which it's so hilarious that I ended up modelling, because the bully at my school, because I'm tall and I was very skinny as a teenager, she would always get me in the changing rooms in PE, like last thing on a Friday. And she would be like, Amber, you need to stand up straighter. You're like so tall, but you slouch too much. Like, don't worry, I'm going to tell you how to walk. And she would walk up and down like on a catwalk and then make me do it and like show me how to walk holding myself straight. And it's just so funny and ironic that I ended up actually doing catwalks, I think. Because, yeah.
It sounds like a deep psychological battle she was waging against you. It's not like standard bullying that. She's not flush your head down the toilet or something.
No, I know. It's like, this is psychological warfare. But actually, in the end, it was so funny. This is off topic, but my best friend used to sit with me on the school bus, and we'd come up with like potential comebacks. So like if the bully said X, then I would say Y. And the bully, the girl who, let's call her Patricia, she wasn't called Patricia, but she was like extremely small.
Right.
And so the very hilarious, good comeback that I came up with my best friend was that if she said something about my height or the fact that I was skinny or the fact that I was like willowy and tall, my genius comeback would be to say, how's the weather down there today?
Scything, cutting, big deep burn there.
One day, last thing on a Friday, she got me in the PE changing rooms and she was trying to make me walk up and down like I was on a catwalk. And I just had that moment that every bullied kid has at some point where you just go, I'm not doing this anymore. And I just went, how's the weather down there today? And then like ran away, and that was basically the end of the bullying.
Dropped the ball. You did it.
But also with the help of like parental intervention. But yeah, so I was bullied a lot for being tall and for being skinny and for being, you know, a girl that was like taller than most of the boys. And so I think that probably also has slightly influenced a way of dressing, which is, I've come a lot more into myself now and I'm much more confident with it, but I definitely still have a slight resistance to like completely getting everything out and being really on show, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the lessons that we learn at an early age like that do influence us down the line.
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Did you dream of being a model when you were little, or was it only when it was suggested to you by other people because of your stature and your...
Oh my God, yeah, that. No, I mean, as I said, I was very badly bullied at school.
Yeah, so it's never even like on the radar at all.
Oh my God, like, no. And I think that that's actually a very similar story for a lot of models, which is that as young girls or as teenagers, they are often the slightly odd-looking, very tall, skinny girl at their school who's like not that cool, or at least not considered to be like, you know, quote unquote beautiful. I know a lot of models who have a very similar story to that. And I think that it's interesting. Faces change a lot through camera lenses. And a lot of the time models who in photographs look unbelievable, you see them in real life and you're like, God, she has a really unusual face. Like it's not beautiful, but it's also very angular, or it's like quite unusual looking. And so I think that model scouts, you know, have a real skill because they are able to look at this 15-year-old and go, yeah, she could end up like selling a fragrance one day. And that, so no, I had no thought or dream or anything to do modeling. My dream was always to be an actress or to be a pianist. And then modeling just kind of came along. But no, it wasn't a dream. It was a real shock. It was a real shock. And I still feel like it's kind of unbelievable that it happened to me, you know.
Can I just come back to something you said about second-hand clothes and the jumper that you wore that's your auntie's? Like, I love getting hand-me-downs that I know have got stories kind of like built into them. Is that something that's important to you? Like that jumper, is it particularly valuable because of who it was worn by and how it was worn.
Oh my God, yeah. Especially now I actually understand the meaning and the kind of the value in having those family stories in your wardrobe. I think I obviously went through a period like probably everybody does especially in my early 20s, where I didn't want anything secondhand because that's all I'd ever had. And I wanted everything to be new and like from a brand.
Yeah.
And now it's like they're the things I value the most in my wardrobe. And it's like, I have my aunt's jumper, which is an Aran knit, which is probably like, where are we now? Like 40 years old. I've got my granny's skirt from the 1950s, which is like a proper, like almost Grease style, like dance skirt.
Yeah.
And then my godmother, who's the most amazing woman ever, who's traveled a lot, has given me a lot of very special things. So I have like a bangle that she got from a hill tribe in Thailand, which is made out of solid silver, and it's like probably 100 years old.
Wow.
I have a really like lovely collection of things that I don't wear much because it's too special to risk losing. But yeah, I think
it's like proper heirloom stuff.
Yeah. And I have stuff that I've gotten through work or things that I've bought that I keep now because like I want my kid to have them.
Even the way that they wear, you can maybe feel the shape that your auntie was because of where the shoulders end and stuff like that. And natural fabrics particularly do lend themselves to aging well, don't they? Like a well-worn leather jacket or a pair of boots, you can kind of feel the shape of the person that's had them before.
Yeah. And their smell. Like I actually did a shoot years ago. Do you know who Isabella Blow was?
I don't.
She was a very influential stylist and journalist who basically, I would say, kind of single-handedly spotted like Alexander McQueen and John Galliano when they were still studying fashion. And so she had like an incredible collection of clothes that were like Alexander McQueen's first collection and like people like that. Lots of Philip Tracy hats and things. And she died very tragically. And Nick Knight did a shoot with a few of us at her family house with her clothes. And because this is like couture, none of them had been washed like since she'd worn them. And so it felt like this very intimate, like sensitive experience to be wearing this person's clothes where it's like, they weren't dirty or anything. It was more that you could still see like a lipstick stain on something or like smell her perfume or like one of the dresses had like a little bit of a cigarette burn on them. And you're like, those are the things that actually make things more special. Like to me, that's not like vandalism or damage. That to me is like, that makes that item of clothing so much more interesting because it carries like with it a story, I think.
I fully agree.
But yeah, I also think the other thing I've noticed with the stuff that I have from my family is just how people's bodies have changed because I'm 5'10" and like so relatively tall. And everything I have that belonged to my grandmother or my mum or even my aunt, like I've had to get all the waists taken out. And that's not because I'm big, it's just because everyone is bigger now,
Yeah.
And that's the kind of mad thing that I think if you go to the V&A or if you go and see like
the suits of armour.
Oh my God, they're tiny.
Yeah, little hobbit armour.
Yeah. The shoes, it's like children's size.
Thank God for well-rounded diets.
I know, well, yeah, and dairy products.
So still on the kind of places and geography thing, London, where we are today.
Yeah.
You moved here when you were pretty young.
Yeah.
Did you feel that friction of coming from where you come from with the welly boots and the kind of dungarees and the natural fabrics to being in the bustling metropolis? And did you have to change the way that you dressed to fit into your new environment? How old were you when you moved here? Like
17. 16, really, 17. I mean, it was a joyful thing because I was 17, so I couldn't wait to get out of Scotland. I couldn't wait to come to London. I had been scouted to be a model. I was suddenly doing photo shoots and actually being given the opportunity to try on clothes that I probably never would have worn. And there's a big difference, I think, between like high fashion and then trends. And all I'd ever had were like the trends at school, which was like this year everyone has a cricket jumper or like this year everyone has, Adidas trainers or whatever. And so I think beginning to model helped me develop my own sense of style rather than just like this is what Becky at school has said is in. Do you know what I mean?
Patricia as well.
Patricia, maybe not Patricia. But so it was like a very joyful, exciting time where, my style changed completely. And I think it's probably changed completely again since then, as I would hope, because I was 17. And, I was also going through a weird club phase as well. So I kind of had I had the modeling side of things, which was like wearing lots of very beautiful, very elegant, like interesting clothing. But then also I was like, my boyfriend at the time was a student. So I was sort of living this student life with him, even though I was modeling, and we would go clubbing every Friday, and I would wear like neon leggings and high top trainers and leotards.
Is this kind of like new rave era?
Yeah, it was a bit new rave. It was a lot of dubstep and
Go down forward. We up forward.
Who am I? It was a real mix, and just that time of moving to London was so exciting.
Yeah,
and
I used to come down for raves to London, specifically like dubstep, garage, grime.
Oh,
like
really?
Plastic People in Shoreditch.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I was actually a member of Fabric.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I had a Fabric first membership.
Been to a few dances there. Sick sound system at Fabric. I didn't know this about you at all. I didn't know there was a kind of neon rave element.
Well, you probably wouldn't. People don't, when they meet me now, they're like, what? Because now I sort of drink like, herbal tea and like wake up late and like go to bed early. I had a real like party phase. And it was just part of like being in London for the first time and making a whole new group of friends and just being like what I thought was being a grown-up, but actually it was kind of being a kid let loose in a city, which I think is amazing. Like, as in the time felt amazing. And I wouldn't change it for anything now.
Such a great formative experience that. And London at 17, nuts. Yeah, the modelling stuff. So, like, some of the clothes that you were exposed to there was proper, like, haute couture kind of. What were some of the photographers and the brands that you were modelling for when you first moved down?
Well, the thing that like kind of started off my career properly was that I got to open the Christopher Kane show at Fashion Week. So he was like a very big part of the rest of my career happening. And he's just, I think, a visionary when it comes to clothes. I got to shoot for Italian Vogue with Solveig Sundsbo, who's obviously incredible. And I was then walking for people like Aquascutum and Vivienne Westwood and Hermes in Paris.
Wow.
British powerhouses for sure. Erdem, Hermes. And then later on, I got to work with like Jean-Paul Gaultier and Dior and people like that. So that was kind of the modeling side of it. And I was shooting. I did a lot of work with Burberry. So I wore Burberry for like years and years and years.
It's worst places to be kitted out from, isn't there?
Yeah, there's much worse places. It was a real mix. It was a lot of British designers, but it was a lot of international designers too. And there was always a slight issue with my body because I was also acting, and I was like, I'm not a big person by any stretch of the imagination, but I was definitely slightly curvier than most fashion models. And so there were a couple of moments.
Especially at the time you were modelling, like there's a little bit more flexibility now, but...
Completely. This is like 13 years ago when it was very much still like you had to be within certain measurements. One of the catwalk shows I did, they literally wrapped my boobs with bandages to like make my silhouette flat. But then you had incredible designers like Christopher Bailey with Burberry, and then like Erdem and Christopher Kane and various other people who I worked with who were happy to make runway looks that fit me.
Yeah.
And even if that just meant a couple of inches extra on the bust or on the hip, like they were happy to do that. And I think that was quite amazing given the time we were in and the fact that I was also having experiences where I was being like told to leave castings because I was quote unquote massive. And so I think I had some dodgy experiences, but I was also like unbelievably lucky with the other experiences.
It does sound super, super exciting. And the kind of clothes that you're wearing, I imagine, weren't something that you would have gone into the boutiques of London and picked up yourself.
No.
You mentioned earlier on about it being important to wear clothes rather than them wearing you.
Yeah.
How does that kind of fit into the modelling side of things? Like, I've done a bit of modelling, but I'm useless at it because I'm a terrible actor. Like, I can do one thing Like I can do a half decent blue steel.
Nice.
But
The high fashion glare.
If you can act, you can embody different characters and different aspects of your own personality. So you can wear different clothes and present them in an interesting way, I suppose. Like, is that something that came quite naturally to you because of your acting chops, or was that something you had to develop as a model?
I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think it's weirdly actually very different to acting. It is sort of an acting, but it's like acting in a much more grandiose, like almost over the top way. Whereas I guess being an actor, your motive is, I think, often to try and make things as truthful as possible, which often means making it as subtle as possible. Whereas as a model, if you're being given these amazing clothes to wear, like you need to match the clothes in terms of energy. And so I think it is like acting, but it's, I don't know, I developed a thing where every time I was given a new look to wear, I would just have a minute to myself, like in front of the mirror on the shoot, and I would just be like, okay, what are the clothes trying to say? Like, what are the angles? What is the shape of this outfit that needs to be shown off in order to sell it well? And so I would always just have that little moment with myself. And then some really great photographers actually will put a mirror next to them so that as you're working with them, you can see what you're doing. And it's like a dance.
That
like,
sounds really helpful. I've not heard of that before.
Yeah. I find it so helpful. I'm one of those people that often looks at the monitor, and it's not because I'm self-conscious or I'm like, oh my God, my makeup looks wrong. It's because I'm looking at my angles and the light and what, because it's difficult to see all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's almost like a camera craft thing where you're looking at the final product and figuring out what you can do to make it more interesting or more powerful. So I definitely think there is like a character that comes with clothing. And I think that your posing should be very different if you're wearing combat trousers to if you're wearing a couture dress, and it's a different person. So like, why not move differently and kind of have a different facial expression? It's so rare, especially nowadays, that people get an opportunity to wear clothes that have been made for them sometimes, or just wear clothes made by people who are that talented. It's like, I'm so lucky that I got to have that experience,
It's fun, isn't it?
Like, it's so fun. It's like dress up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not me.
So we touched on the minefield of going to a non-uniform school, which I
Yeah.
suppose forces you into trialing different looks, fitting in with different groups and things like that.
Yeah.
Were there any parts of your personal clothing history that you describe as a kind of failed experiment into a specific genre? Tell me about one of them.
Well, after music school, I went to another school that was a much sort of more like posh private school that I was on a scholarship at. And I went through a real phase when I went there of wearing cricket jumpers. And do you remember that hair that most girls had like around 2008, 2009, where it was like this big sweep?
Yeah.
Where like you'd have this very deep side parting.
Emo inspired, maybe.
A bit emo inspired, but then there was kind of like a private school girl version of that too, which was like very straightened, but very big.
I think I know precisely what you mean.
I did a bit of that.
Okay.
I'm not proud of it.
Okay.
And then
What was the process? Did you have to back comb? Did you have to straighten then back comb? Did you have to...
straightening, then back combing, lots of hairspray, and then sort of oversized cricket jumpers with like mini skirts and ripped tights, and then welly boots because it was Scotland. But no, so I did that, and then I also had I would say quite suspect sort of new rave phase when I moved to London, which was like a lot of American apparel, leotards, leggings, sort of with high top trainers. The thing is like when you're going to a club for a whole night, you're going to get quite sweaty. So there was like a necessity to that, which was like, I can't be too dressed up, but I also don't want to be naked. So like leotards and leggings turned out to be a great win.
And American Apparel were providing exactly that at the time. Like
that.
That's where I got most of my clothes when I was going raving. Like the standard hoodies and like a lovely mall T-shirt that I wore
my
pretty much
God.
it was class. I loved American Apparel. It was Vice magazine, and for the photos, like, were always super cool. Like, I want to be friends with them people. Like,
Oh my God, 100%. And then there was also that phase of wearing headbands. Do you remember girls wearing headbands like underneath their hair? That I had a lot of like gold and silver ones. And then I was also I was doing like neon eyeliners. And it was just a lot of neon, it's actually, I look back on fondly, but I think it was maybe not me.
yeah, wasn't like
Necessarily.
intrinsically Amber.
No.
So let's talk about fashion inspiration. Where were you looking to for fashion inspo when you were finding your own personal style? For me, growing up, it was just musicians. Like, I'd be looking at what my favourite artists were wearing, and I'd be trying to do kind of like H&M Topshop version of that, basically. But for you, what were you looking to when you were dressing yourself?
Yeah, definitely musicians. Like, obviously there was like a big Arctic Monkeys phase, so there was a lot of like skinny jeans and like polo shirts and like stuff like that. I definitely wanted to be an emo, but maybe wasn't quite emo enough.
Okay, so the indie sleaze, kind of British indie sleaze.
There was definitely an indie sleaze thing.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with because when I was 15, I was just beginning to start modelling. So I was obsessed with people like Erin O'Connor and Naomi Campbell. And there was a really wonderful model called Morwenna Lytton Cobbold who walked a lot for like Vivienne Westwood and stuff. And so I was just beginning to like, Vivienne Westwood was a big one actually. And I remember saving up to buy, I don't know if you remember, but she did these high heels with this brand called Melissa. Okay. And they were like plastic high heels. And they were bright colours and they were scented. And you could get them on eBay for like maybe 80 quid.
Yeah, there's not enough scented clothing around these days.
I know, I feel like there's a big gap in the market, like scented clothing.
Was it like, did it smell like the store? Did it smell like, did you do perfumes as well, right, Vivienne Westwood? You get
Yeah. I can't remember what it smelled like, but the ones I had were like the colour of Parma violets.
If they smell like that as well.
Purple plastic high heel. I mean, mad. But and then I would say when I came into modelling properly, that was when I started to be inspired more by like other models that I was working with. And also there was a strange uniform that you kind of had to adopt as a model because when you're going to castings, I'm sure it's different now. I'm sure that now they want everyone to look very individual. But when I was modelling and starting out, it was like you had to basically show how skinny you were, but not be naked.
Okay.
So it was a lot of like black skinny jeans with vest tops and, mini skirts that you would sort of throw like a massive jumper over the top of in between castings. But you sort of had to go to castings showing off your body, but in a chic way.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you about skinny jeans, because like skinny jeans at the moment get a lot of flack. I know a lot of younger people than me see them as the kind of like the dad jeans or the mum jeans and bad ones at that. But like at the time, no one was wearing anything. If you were cool, skinny jeans is what you were in.
100%. If it didn't give you thrush, it wasn't a skinny jean. Sorry.
That's a genuine issue, is it?
No, for girls, 100%. Sorry, I realised.
I didn't realise that was
not that kind of podcast.
No, it is. If you want to talk about
that. With girls, there was a lot of UTIs going on.
Yeah, I suppose the male equivalent would be to look at the sperm counts of boys that were wearing like
that were around in
jeans.
2008.
Yeah. I'm sure it's slightly decreased for that reason.
I remember, like, I have very strong memories of completely losing the feeling in one leg, because of how skinny my jeans
Dedication to the cause, then.
100%. Like, and if you had your legs crossed, like the top leg, you'd lose it for like a good 5 minutes. And I remember taking them off and sort of having like the imprint of the jeans just like all down my legs. Like they were so skinny.
They'll be back in 10 years' time, won't they?
I don't want them to be. But recently, like Miu Miu and various designers tried to bring back the low cut jean, like the very low cut
the Britney jean. Kind of.
Yeah. And I was like, I can't do that now. I'm so sorry, guys. It's too much.
Those hip bones belong to me.
Yeah, they belong to me. I don't have the stomach I used to have. Let's just leave it there.
The fashion cycle is particularly apparent with jeans. Like it's so repetitive, like you were saying about your military pants being boot cut. No one would have worn a boot cut jean 5 years ago. That was like the worst thing you could wear. I'd like to see a mathematician like put a formula on it, because I'm sure it's pretty boil downable to it's quite
think so.
rigorous mathematics.
Well, I saw a thing the other day, someone saying that for men, longer coats always come back in when there's a recession.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because there must be like economical trends in terms of clothes and what people want to wear. And I think probably at the moment everyone's feeling like a bit more depressed.
Yeah.
And so we all want to cover up more and like be cozy and have longer coats. And I think it's really interesting. But I also think that as somebody now in their 30s, I'm about to sound like an old maid, but like kids these days, they look like they did when I was 13. Like,
it's mad, isn't it?
It's like,
you kind of want to show them, like, I was doing that.
Yeah, I did that first.
Yeah. But I think they look...
proper 90s. Like,
they look like a really good version of what I was wearing because they've got the internet and mood boards and stuff like that.
And Pinterest.
I just had Krang magazine.
Yeah, exactly. I had Ms. and Sugar. And Ms. was the big one. But yeah, I think there are such clear cycles and it's really funny. And it's now making me wish that I'd kept like some of the clothes that I used to have. But
kind of a sick Depop shop if you'd have done that.
Oh my God, I know. Do you follow Depop dramas?
Oh, it's so good.
Fuck,
it's incredible. Like, I started to think that some of the might be plants, but in the early days of Depop drama, it was pure, absolute joy. There's some characters on there, isn't there? So your current profession acting demands the wearing of clothes to create characters. Talk to me a little bit about how important clothes are in that respect, like the authenticity of the materials and stuff that you're wearing.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the jobs that you've done where the clothes have been particularly important to the character you're playing.
I always think that I never know who the character is until I've met the costume designer.
Wow.
And maybe it's different for other actors, but for me, it's like it's a really, really important part of figuring out who they are as a person. If it's a good costume designer, which it usually is, of course, they're all very talented. They know the language of clothes and they're able to suggest things and bring things to you that you might not have thought of when it comes to how they might hold themselves or how they might move in something. And I think that it's often in the costume fittings that I really go like, oh, I get them now. Like I think I know how I want them to walk. And especially if you're doing period, like the clothes kind of do half the work for you, I think.
It's good. Like quite a few of your jobs have been period pieces, right?
Yeah. Emma was obviously the early 1800s, Regency era. Peaky was 1930s. With Peaky, for instance, the costumes, some of my costumes were actually real pieces from the 30s that Alison McCosh, the costume designer, had got from auctions in the States. And they had then done very clever things because of my height where they'd like added length and stuff. But I was getting to wear like real fabrics and real pieces from that time. And I think that how can that not like impact how you feel? But I think especially with women, the clothes have just changed so much in terms of the silhouettes and which parts of our bodies were being held in and which weren't. And so I think, it makes a huge difference. And it's
the way that you breathe, the way that you
can you breathe?
Carry yourself. Yeah,
can you even breathe?
I mean, corsets were a massive thing for a long time.
Have you
ever been like cinched into something on an acting job that's genuinely changed how your lungs operate? Like,
oh my God, Emma, 100%. We had made to measure corsets that were amazing corsets because they fit us. But it was very weird eating lunch because you would like, I don't want to say it without sounding weird, but like you would feel your lunch just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then at the end of the day, they'd take the corset off and everything in your body would change again. It was like, it was such a strange physical experience. But yeah, costumes are huge. And I think the fabrics and the cuts of things and the way that things are made makes such a big difference to how you hold yourself. And, it's really important, I think.
Top 3 selected.
I'm going to ask you for a top 3 list, but I'll give you a choice since you're such a polymath. Can you give me your 3 best dressed actors or your top 3 best dressed musicians?
Okay, I'll do musicians.
Okay.
Kendrick Lamar.
Flawless.
I think for their time, Radiohead, Tom York, for that time was, I think, quite iconic.
Unwitting style icon, I'd imagine, Tom.
I know, but that's kind of why I think that's a bit of a
cool
style icon. And then who would the third one be for me? I think like Florence Welch, I think the way that her clothes and her kind of on-stage costumes add to her overall like persona as a musician, I think is so powerful.
I was going to ask you a question precisely about that, actually, and about how important image can be to changing the perception of a musician.
Yeah.
Like, if Tom York dressed in, I don't know, a dinner jacket, it'd be perceived very differently.
Well, he wouldn't be Tom York to me anymore.
No.
And I think that's probably why I said him, because like I love that. I mean, Radiohead's music just reminds me of a time in my life, and the clothes are so part of that. And for me, that time in my life was like being 15, 14, you know, beginning to make new friends, going to parties. It was like just beginning to like discover myself as a teenager. And that sort of heady, smoky, like sitting in somebody's caravan in a field somewhere, like that to me is really encapsulated by Radiohead.
Yeah.
And so the clothes, I think it is iconic. I'm going to stand by it. But then you have someone like Kendrick, who I really admire because he's got a very, very personal style, but he's also not all about the labels and the diamonds in the way that like a lot of other hip hop artists are. And he talks about that in his music in a very interesting way, I think.
Okay.
He wants his wealth to be inner wealth and not outer wealth.
Okay.
And so I think that the way he dresses is like a very good depiction of that. And I think he's
and that's so apparent
super stylish as well.
In his music, that's like one of the key tenets, I suppose, and it's like hip hop but different.
Yeah, yeah, completely. But yeah, and then Florence kind of has the kind of almost like Stevie Nicks folk kind of vibe, and I love that too. And there's definitely a part of me that like would love to be a sort of princess in medieval times with long hair and flowers everywhere. And I just like, there's something about that speaks to me that I think is like so cool.
I was going to ask you if there's a through thread between those three musicians, but it seems to me like each are appreciated for a particular different reason. There.
I think so, yeah. But my music taste is quite random, I think, and so And like I said, they always represent a time in my life, and so I think that's why I love them as well.
On Insta, I've seen you championing some smaller independent brands. Mm-hmm. Is this something you'd like to see fashion move towards, away from the kind of bigger, more established houses to kind of more artisan, independent creators?
I think so. I love the bigger brands too, though.
They can achieve things that you can't achieve with a small budget, I suppose.
Yeah, but which also I think means it's really interesting and impressive when a small brand achieves something amazing. And I think also that's just through having modelled so much. So many of those people are my friends or people who I've met through work who have started a brand and like tried to create something of their own. And so I always feel like, I feel more invested almost in the clothes because I'm like, God, I know the person who made this. I know how long it took and I know what they put into it. And so I think
it comes back to that story thing, I suppose, again, that we talked about with the second hand. Like if you know where it's been made, who it's been made by, it's more valuable to you, I suppose. But
generally, there's a step away from fast fashion, and I think people want to know where their clothes came from and who made them and the story behind them. And I think that I feel like there's a general sense of people now wanting the things in their wardrobe to have meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that smaller brands often give that to you because a lot of them, especially nowadays, focus on stuff like sustainability, where they go, well, actually, all our knitwear is made by women in Spain and all of our denim is organic and it comes from this one factory. And it's like, that's something I want to buy, you know, rather than just sort of giving money to companies that are amazing and have great artists within them, but ultimately they don't really need the money. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean.
Next hype.
So we talked about your birthday, having just been. You're in your 30s now.
Yeah.
Like, how would you like to see the next decades or so playing out? What would you like to be wearing when you're 55, 60 years old? Have you thought that far ahead?
Oh, God. I mean, by that point, I think I'd love to be one of those women who just doesn't care at all. So then there's a side of me that's like, I'd love to be a 55-year-old who like just wears power suits all the time.
Yeah.
And like massive glasses and like, you know, has like a real kind of Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek, like fabulousness. But I also kind of think that by that age, I might just be living in like a hut in the woods somewhere.
Back up in Scotland.
Maybe back up in Scotland.
Back in your dungarees.
So I think maybe the dungarees, maybe the woolly jumpers, maybe all of it. But I think I think getting older, I think, is great. Like, I feel more comfortable now than I ever have. And I feel more decisive now about clothes than I ever have. And
Decisive? How do you
yeah,
mean?
I don't feel afraid to say I don't like that thing.
Okay.
And I don't feel afraid to throw something out of my wardrobe because it just doesn't make me feel good.
Okay.
Whereas I feel like 4, 5, 6 years ago, I would have kept hold of the skinny jeans because I would have been going, well, I should love them.
Yeah.
And now I'm a bit more ruthless in terms of being like, no, I don't want to wear that. It makes me feel awful.
Yeah, there's a lot of power comes with throwing something out. It can be quite a cleansing.
Yeah, big
You know,
time.
it's just been not worn for 4 or 5 years. It's got to go.
It's got to go.
Get it on Depop.
Unless it's a family heirloom.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. I think I have like a 2-year rule.
I think I'm probably near a 7 or 8 at the moment.
really?
I need to take a leaf out of your book.
Yeah. But I have like lots of really incredible clothes from Burberry and, you know, brands that I've worked with where it's like, I probably wouldn't necessarily wear them day to day, but I know that one day I'll give them to my kids.
Yeah.
And so those things stay. Those never get thrown out. You know?
Beautiful thought.
Yeah.
So as a final question, I'd like to ask you currently, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you care about clothes?
6.
Healthy?
Do you think that's healthy?
I think that's healthy.
I actually recently have been thinking I want to lean more on them again to help me feel good, in the sense that obviously everyone hates the C word now, but during COVID, we all just I lived in a tracksuit for 2 years. And I think I lost a bit of my sense of like adventure when it came to clothes. It really became maybe too much about the comfort over the style. And so recently I've been trying to just like, in a fun way, just be like, oh, well, maybe I will wear a dress today instead of just jeans and a jumper. And so I think it's in a healthy place. Yeah, I think it's a 6, 7.
Amber, thanks a million.
Thank you for
doing
having
it.
me.
Really, really, really
So nice to
appreciate
see
it.
you.
Yeah, you too.
Well, that was pretty lovely, wasn't it? Nice one, Amber, for coming on and for being a total legend. She's just been casting her first play called Shape of Things, so if you fancy wearing your lovely clothes out somewhere nice, go and catch her live in that, she'll be class. Right, I said it at the beginning and I'll say it again now. If you like this episode, then subscribe, stay in the loop. Go and follow us on the socials. We're at My Own Garms everywhere. There's loads of bonus footage, clips, BTS, guest announcements, and all that good stuff. And if you like what we're doing, you've got a business, slide in the DMs. Let's work out a little sponsorship thing. Because this shit doesn't pay for itself. I fucking paid for it and I'm skint. Right, that's that. Nice one for being here. We'll be back next week with another absolute winner of a guest. See you then.
Breaking, my mind is breaking. Strangers, oh, I get so much by strangers.